about the rescuer syndrome and why you need to get rid of it. Urgently. Oh, this might hurt someone right now. But what can you do? Let's figure it out. A male rescuer is a sort of noble knight on a white horse. In reality, a person with a superiority complex who disguises his need for control as care. A self-satisfied idiot with a hero complex. He thinks life has broken her. But in reality, she's simply using him like a free taxi, therapist, and attention donor. He doesn't fall in love with the woman. He falls in love with his reflection in her eyes. Look how good I am. Look how noble I am. This part of your mental programming needs to be changed urgently, ripped out root and branch. Otherwise, you won't have relationships. You'll have a complete disaster. Example 1. Protect her from the family. Her family is toxic and doesn't understand her creative nature. He fights with her parents, proving how terrible they are. He convinces her to move in with him, promising to support her talent. 2 years later, it turns out her family was right. She's a lazy manipulator, and her creativity is just an excuse not to work. But by then, he has already burned bridges with decent people and spent a lot of money and nerves for love. Example 2. Save me from my past. Your girlfriend still communicates with her ex? Of course, he's an abuser and a bastard, and she just can't refuse him. And you, the noble fool, decide to become her defender from the cruel world. Reality. She writes to him first, meets him secretly, and perfectly understands what she's doing. But why give up the comfortable role of the victim when you can receive attention and resources from 2 men at once? She laughs at your naivety, and when the truth comes out, you're left with a broken heart and one question. But I was such a good guy. Example 3. The therapist lover. She constantly talks about her psychological traumas. He listens for hours, gives advice, and heals her with his understanding. He's proud that she opens up only with him. In reality, she's a professional victim who turned her problems into a way of receiving attention. When he burns out from the role of a free psychiatrist, she simply finds a new healer. Here's the question. Why do you need this? Want a relationship? Be a man, strong, calm, with boundaries. Want sex? Go after it directly, don't beg. Want to save people? Get a job in emergency services. But stop being the nice guy. Nice guys get milked, drained, and thrown away. And then they sit in therapy asking, why did she leave for some jerk while I ended up with nothing? About ungrateful girls and the bare minimum. I've been on a lot of dates, and I always order a taxi for the girl both ways. It's not necessary at all, but I can afford it, and it's simply more convenient for me. We can meet directly at the place. I don't have to wait for her outside the venue, etc. So here's the thing. About 80% of girls don't say thank you, neither for the taxi nor for dinner. For them, it's just the bare minimum. They've watched too many reels and now devalue almost everything you do for them, taking it completely for granted. What's interesting is that most successful men I know value active gratitude above all else. It's rare for a girl to say something like, "Thanks for taking care of the ride, I really appreciate it." Or to take a photo of the flowers you gave her and send a message like, "I've been admiring them all week, thank you again." But apparently that's just the bare minimum. Sometimes a girl doesn't express gratitude deliberately, so it creates the impression that this level of treatment is normal and routine for her. Just imagine what kind of mindset that requires. Remember, there is no such thing as a bare minimum. A girl should appreciate every single rose, even if there's only one. Otherwise, she's just a typical short-term fling who will eventually marry whoever she can find at 35 out of sheer desperation. In a way, though, it's convenient. You can spot someone unsuitable for a relationship very early, simply by observing how she was raised and how she reacts to the small things. Traditional relationships and role distribution. I often come across women who tell the same story. They were dating a man who provided for them, helped financially, paid for the apartment, covered many expenses. Then they broke up, most often on her initiative. And suddenly she had to face adult life. Rent needs to be paid, work is exhausting, and every decision carries personal responsibility. Honestly and bluntly, it's often a sad sight. Many of them seem tired, irritated, sometimes struggling with anxiety or depressive moods, yet fiercely defending their independence. And in conversation, it often becomes clear that, deep down, they actually dream of being under the protection of a man again. The traditional model of relationships, where the man takes the leading role, has existed for centuries. Supporters argue that it aligns with certain biological and social tendencies, and has historically been common in many societies. Modern trends, however, often promote different ideals, encouraging women to pursue independence and self-sufficiency. Critics say that some of these ideas can become harmful if they push people into roles that don't genuinely match their personal desires or values. A woman can absolutely be fulfilled, independent, and self-sufficient, especially when that independence comes naturally from her chosen path in life, rather than from a reactive rebellion against traditional roles in an attempt to prove something to herself or to others. The peak of men and women in the dating and relationship market. People often say that a woman's peak is around 19, while a man's peak is around 35. The idea behind this claim is usually framed in terms of perceived dating options, not necessarily personal value or happiness. At around 35, a man may be seen by some women as more established, experienced, and confident. But supporters of this idea often argue that the main reason is simply basic math and dating preferences. There are exceptions, but it's commonly said that many women tend to prefer slightly older partners, while many men prefer younger partners. When you're 20, your realistic dating pool might mainly include women around 18 to 20, and some of them may prefer men a bit older. But by 35, a man might potentially attract attention from a much wider age range, from younger adults to women closer to his own age. From that perspective, some people argue that a man's market value in dating can increase with age, while women may experience changing attention patterns as they get older. Of course, real relationships are far more complex and depend on personality, compatibility, life goals, and emotional maturity, not just age. Because of this, some advice often given to young men is not to rush serious commitments too early. Instead, focus on personal growth, build your career and stability, develop confidence and maturity. Avoid settling for relationships that are unhealthy or incompatible. The underlying message is that before entering a serious long-term relationship, many people benefit from becoming more self-aware, emotionally stable, and personally developed. Focus on yourself. Focus on growth. Never chase a woman. This isn't advice. It's presented as a rule. Chasing a woman is like running after a butterfly in a swamp. She flutters around while you jump after her, covered in mud, soaked, looking ridiculous. And then she lands on the shoulder of the man who calmly sits under a tree and doesn't chase at all. The idea here is that a woman may instinctively lose respect for a man who tries too hard. She might never say it out loud, but in this view, the harder he pushes, the more his perceived value drops. Want to hear the harsh irony? Sometimes when you stop chasing someone, they begin chasing you instead. Not because you're playing games, but because you've regained something that often makes a person attractive: self-sufficiency. In a world where everyone competes for attention, scarcity becomes currency. Your time, your attention, your presence, these are resources. And like any resource, the less freely available they are, the more they tend to be valued. When you chase someone relentlessly, the message it can send is that your time has no value, that your schedule is empty, that you're ready to drop everything just for someone else's attention. From this perspective, that isn't romantic. It's self-undermining. A cynical interpretation of social behavior says that people often avoid those who appear too available, not necessarily out of cruelty, but because the subconscious wonders, if he wants me this desperately, maybe others don't. Am I missing something? In this narrative, A man chasing a woman endlessly is compared to a dog wagging its tail harder and harder, hoping that effort alone will make someone love it. Confidence and calmness, the foundation of attraction. There are many tricks, techniques, and moves, but all of them matter very little if you don't behave like a predator. If you don't send the nonverbal meta-message, I fully control the situation, I'm comfortable, I'm observing you. Imagine a hunter in the jungle. One stands still, holding his rifle. His eyes are calm, his breathing steady. He knows, if the prey doesn't appear this hour, it will appear the next. The other runs around nervously, panics, aims frantically, makes noise, and scares away every living creature. Who do you think returns with the prey? The same principle is applied here to interacting with women. Calmness signals the presence of a predator, not prey. She senses your inner tension, even if you're smiling. You can say the right words, but if you're nervous inside, you've already lost. Calm movements, calm voice, measured gestures. One tactic mentioned here is deliberately creating a pause that feels awkward, but only for the woman. For him, it isn't awkward at all. He remains calm, simply sitting with his thoughts. He's not panicking, not desperately searching for what to say next. In his mind, he's fully in control of the situation. Meanwhile, she becomes the one who feels the pressure and uncertainty. Early in a date, this dynamic can make him appear dominant in the interaction, which she may sense. The idea being expressed is that once you master confidence, you've already done half the work. A man without inner calmness is compared to a market vendor who doesn't believe in his own product. Take me, I'm a good guy. Here are my qualities. I can cook and listen to your feelings. The argument here is that this approach doesn't attract people. Instead, what others often respond to is energy and presence, and the energy of confidence can feel magnetic.